Hello, welcome back. My name is Ari, and today is this month's Shannara reading vlog. So, this month's trilogy is the Genesis of Shannara trilogy, and this one basically starts somewhere between 80 and 100 years after the end of the Word and the Void trilogy, and the world has gone to shit. Basically, the apocalypse has happened. Governments have collapsed. Almost everyone is dead from either chemical spills, plagues, war. Something called the Great War happened, and that's not really covered in the book. It's just something that's like mentioned as something that happened. And between the bombs and biological warfare, existence and people pretty much don't exist anymore. There are small groups of people left alive. You've got people who live in compounds where they have remade sports stadiums, like a football stadium or something, secured it, and then live locked behind its walls. You've got people who are street children, and they just kind of live on the streets and survive the best they can. You've got people who live in the countryside and survive the best they can. You have mutated humans, of people who used to be humans, but through the diseases and the contaminants in the air and water, they have changed. And those are called things like spiders, lizards, croaks, moles. There's a bunch of different ones. Those are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head, and they're not super mentioned in this book. They become more important later in the series, if I remember correctly. There's also demons and their army of what are called once-men. And once-men are exactly what they sound like. They're men who were once men. Now they are kind of soulless, evil beings. And if you know somebody who has become a once-man, they won't remember you and they'll just try to kill you. Probably succeed if you get close enough to talk to them. So that's kind of the setup for the trilogy overall. Unlike The Word and the Void, this does follow 4 separate main characters. You've got a Knight of the Word named Logan Tom, who I like a whole lot better than I liked John Ross. Logan Tom was a compound kid as a child until the demons and the once-men overran his compound, and he was one of the very few handful of people to escape and got adopted into a community that attacks slave pens. And the once-men, when they that's their goal, is they go kill compounds or attack communities, enslave everybody, and they are breeding children to turn the children into demons. So the only purpose of humanity anymore is to be slaves for breeding for demon kind. But Logan becomes a Knight of the Word to seek revenge against the demons who have destroyed his family and everybody he's ever loved, while John Ross became a Knight of the Word because he was bored and he didn't know what to do with his life. So Logan's story is much more compelling, and he's a much more committed knight. So I like him more. There is another Knight of the Word. Her name is Angel Perez, and her mission, I guess I should say Logan's mission, is to attack the slave pens and free as many people as he can, kill as many demons and once-men as he can. That's basically what he does, is he drives around finding different slave pens, attacks them, frees everybody he can, goes to the next one. Angel's mission up to this point has been to rescue children from the compounds before they're overrun by demons. So as the demons are coming in and killing and enslaving anybody in the compounds, she sneaks in the back escapes with like a handful of adults and some children, and flees to the countryside or someplace temporarily safe because it's post-apocalyptic. There's nowhere really safe. The next point of view is Hawk, who is like a 18, 19-ish year old teenage boy in Seattle who leads a tribe of street children called the Ghost. And Hawk has a vision of, it's basically the story of Moses, honestly, where he is going to gather his children and lead them to the promised land. And he dreams about this in, you know, all sorts of, like, takes care of the other children, knowing that someday he's going to lead them to the promised land. He's just waiting for that trigger to happen. The last group that we look at are the Elves. So elves have always existed, they just hide from humanity, and the Elves of Sintra are basically like the chosen of the Elcrease, or basically who we follow. This tree on the front cover is the Elcrease, and she is the tree that is the key, or the lock, I guess. She is the tree that is the lock on the that separates the Fey demon kind from coming into our world realm and destroying everything. The demons that exist up to this point are human demons, but the fairy or Fey demons have been locked away for thousands of years by the Elcrease. I hate that the Elcrease is on this cover because the characters, I can't even remember his name, but the Elven characters only have like a handful of chapters. Like, this is not their book. They're mostly featured in the book called the fucking Elves of Sintra. So why do we have a big ass picture of a tree that maybe has 2 whole chapters in this book? This should be like a picture of like the Seattle skyline. Or like an army of once-men and demons, not the Elcrease. The Elcrease is not super explained in this series, but is a very, very important character in my favorite Shannara book of all time, which is the Elfstones of Shannara. Hawk is an important character in his whole, like, Moses biblical tale. He's the Gypsy Morph. So the child that Nest Freemark had at the very end of the last series has stayed with Nest for a while, and then like the magic vanished and then showed up like 80-ish years later as a teenage boy in Seattle. And that's who Hawk is. But Hawk has no memory of who he was as the Gypsy Morph, or who he was in a previous life. Logan Tom is sent with the bones in the hand of Nest Freemark, or Nest Freemark's hand bones. I don't know how to say that. It's a weird sentence to say out loud. He is sent with the bones of her hands, which are magical, and he like casts the bones and they shake around and form into a claw that points, and it's supposed to point at Hawk. Sounds really creepy in execution, but whatever. But he's supposed to find and protect the Gypsy Morph, and then Angel is recruited by Tatterdemalion, which in the context of the Shannara series, Tatterdemalions are Tatterdemalions are fairy creatures that are the souls of dead children, which sounds very depressing, but they're messengers. But Logan Tom is instructed by Two Bears to go find Hawk or the Gypsy Morph, and Angel is instructed to find and protect the Elves. Angel has not found the Elves by the end of this book. Like I said, that's the purpose of the next book, and at the end of the book, Logan has found Hawk just in time for Hawk and the love of his life, Tessa, to have been pushed off the top, or to have been like executed. Basically, the love of Hawk's life is a girl from a compound, and her name is Tessa. And they should not have a relationship because she is compound, he is not, and it's illegal for them to have a relationship, and so when they're caught, they are executed for breaking compound law. I hate their relationship. It's like, all it is they meet up, they make out, they have sex, even though the sex is not on page. But you're very much aware that they are in a sexual relationship. And she clings to him and talks about how much she loves him. And he's just like, I love you too. If we could get married, we'd be married. But we don't need a ceremony. You're everything that I ever want. And there is no reason that either one of these characters, like, that I'm shown that they like each other. This is basically like how I feel when I see a 15-year-old kid get their first boyfriend or girlfriend, where they're like, I'm in love with you, and then like a week later they forget that they have a boyfriend or girlfriend. Like, this relationship is the dullest, blandest show and not, or tell and not show type of relationship. Like, there's no chemistry, there's no nothing other than them other than on page. It's like she opens the door and they hold each other for hours before he finally has to leave, and then that same thing is repeated over and over again, and then he does stupid shit to go be with her, which is why he's caught, and then she's always like, I'm never going to leave the compound, but I love you, and it's like, what? How is this relationship supposed to ever work? And even Hawk says it all the time. He's like, I don't know how this relationship's ever supposed to work. I just know I can't leave her. I was very annoyed. Basically, this is a 3-star. It's not great. It's better than the last series so far, but I'm still not like blown away. But to be fair, there is a lot of character introduction in here. Like, we're introducing to the characters, we're seeing their past lives, we're seeing like this build-up of like the setting of what the world is like after this apocalypse, and hopefully it gets more interesting in the next book. If I remember correctly, there was some interesting shit in the next book, but I'm not like super thrilled. But I think the 3rd book's going to be like my favorite in this series, because I know how it ends, and I remember going like, oh, this is so cool. But we're gonna see if my teenage memory sticks with me and is correct about this series. So I will be back in a couple of days and let you know about the Elves of Sintra. Okay, the Elves of Sintra is done. This is very much a middle book, so not a whole lot interesting happened. It's just mostly like moving the plot forward. Let's kind of follow each one of the groups of characters, starting from who we see the least. And Hawk and Tessa are who we see the least of in this book. Basically, at the very end of the last book, they are pushed off the top of the stadium in Seattle, expected to, you know, splat at the bottom because they're being put to death. There's a word for that that I can't remember. Executed, that's the word. They're being executed. So they both get pushed off, and a big bright flash of light happens, and all of these lights appear on the water. And that's kind of where the last book leaves off. In this one, the flash of light happens, and Hawk and Tessa are transported by the King of the Silver River to his domain. And the King of the Silver River is a very minor character, but he appears literally all throughout the Shannara series. He is a fairy creature who has existed since the beginning of time, and he can offer sanctuary to anyone in need of it. The Silver River, I believe, is the equivalent of the Columbia River, but I could be wrong. because I'm bad with names. Anyway, you just see, like, throughout this entire book, all you get of Hawke and Tessa is Hawke talks to the King of Silver River, finds out, like, what his destiny is. He gets transported out of the king's domain to the, you know, bank of the Columbia River, walks down a little bit, finds Helen and her large army of children that Angel helped rescue in the previous book from Los Angeles, gets them across the river by using magic, and then tells them to wait there for him. He'll be back in a few days. He needs to go find his family, and then he starts traveling north to see if he can find his family who were left in Seattle. In the meantime, the Ghost and Logan Tom, the Knight of the World, have left Seattle. All of the lights on the water where an army of demons come to destroy the compound and kill everybody left in Seattle. So they flee just ahead of this army of demons, and Logan has a vehicle, but it's not enough room to fit everybody, so most of them are just walking alongside the vehicle, with a few of them inside. One of this children, a very minor character who's only mentioned as being ill for most of the thing, is killed in their fleeing from Seattle. So it's not really an emotional death because you don't really care about the character. Then they have like minor little adventures along the way. Think of it as like a D&D campaign, and eventually at the very end of the book, in the distance, they see Hawke and Tessa and the family's back together. You don't really get their reunion. It's probably going to start off the second book. Now, I will still say that Tessa is just the character that I dislike the most. She's such a hollow, formless character. Bella from Twilight has more personality than Tessa does, and if you know anything about Twilight, you understand how insane of a not personality Tessa has. Basically, imagine you're told to give a compliment about somebody, and it's not somebody you really know, and you're like, oh, they're nice, not kind. We don't know enough about Tessa to tell if she's kind or not. She's just nice. Like, all we know about her is she loves Hawke. Or we're told. We don't even know that. Like, there's nothing in this story that gives Hawke a reason to love Tessa, told or shown, and no reason for Tessa to love Hawke. And I don't think we ever get that. I really think that Tessa as a character exists to give Terry Brooks a reason to attempt to kill Hawke at the end of the first book, so the King of the Silver River has a purpose in this book. But, like, she's just such a hollow character, more so than, like, any other character in this book, that it really, really bothers me that they have this, like, apparently intense love story when there's no rhyme or reason behind the love story. Anyway, moving off from my rant about how much I hate Tessa, the main purpose of the story would be the Elves of Sintra, since it's called the Elves of Sintra. One would hope, at least. Kirsten would be the main elf that we follow in this. It's Kirsten, his other chosen companion, who is like Arisha, something like that. You have Kirsten's older sister, who is a Elven tracker, and Angel. So basically, Angel shows up to the Elven city. Actually, she and Allie, the tatterdemalion, find Sim and get taken to the Elven city, where they come before the king, and they're just like, hey, like, I'm here to protect you because we need to save the Elcrees, blah, 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 blah. And we find out that the Elf King has been like influenced by a demon, and that there's a demon who's like a changeling who's disguised as one of the elves. And a bunch of shit goes down. Allie and Erisha are both killed by the demon that's been tracking Angel. And Kirsten, Sim, and Angel flee into, or they do find the blue elf stones, which is the first set of the tracking stones. They do find those and use those to track the Loden stone. And so most of this book from that point is this random adventures they have, like a D&D campaign, to find the Loden elf stone, which they do, defeat both of the demons, and the book basically ends with, well, their part of the book ends with Kirsten finding the elf stone, Angel's on the verge of dying, and they've kind of been separated fighting different demons, and then they're going to get back together. And then in the next book, you kind of like know what's going to happen, which I guess is okay for a fantasy, because it's not like trying to be mysterious or anything, but you know, like, Kristen's going to take the Loden stone, go back to Sintra, scoop up the whole tree and the city into the elf stone, because it's supposed to like be able to transport a tree, which means the tree has to go in the stone. There's no other way that that can work. Or there might be, and I might just be thrown for a loop, but I can't think of any other way it would work. And since I've read the book before and that's how I think it works, it's probably how it's gonna work. Then they've got to meet up with all of the children who are on the Columbia River, and from there, and then Hawk and his family have to go back to the children that are on the Columbia River. And then from there, they're going to travel along the Columbia to wherever the chosen land, since Hawk is really still like a biblical Moses story, they have to travel to the chosen land, and you know that they're going to be followed by 2 gigantic armies of demons. So, and then wherever their chosen land is, they're going to be protected by the rest of the world is destroyed. And I do know how the world is destroyed at the end, but we'll save that for the next book. All in all, it's okay. It progresses the story. I don't know that I really care for this as much as I remember, because I'm not thrilled that it's just like a biblical retelling. And the more that I'm reading through the Shannara series and finding that these aren't as good as I remember they are, the sadder I am. So hopefully they don't all stay this like mediocre, and maybe, I don't know, maybe they get better, maybe they get worse. I guess I'll find out in upcoming months. But first we have to finish the series. So the last one is the Gypsy Morph, and I will be back with the stunning conclusion to the Gypsy Morph in the next clip. Hello, I have finished the Genesis of Shannara. Specifically, the Gypsy Morph is the last book in the trilogy. I did not plan for this to match my shirt, but apparently it did. I finished this last night, and I don't have a whole lot to say about the book itself, but I probably will talk a little while about the series as a whole. So in this book, I mean, it's the same premise as all of the other books, because it's all trying to get to the safe place, or to get Hawk to lead them to the safe place, right? So page 296 is when they actually all gathered up. So we've got a bunch of like side quest stuff going on here. That's basically, I mean, that's basically the book. It's like all the side quests, everybody gathers up, they start walking, a couple of things happen, they fight the big bad old man demon, and then they get to the safe place and everybody lives happily ever after. It's a pretty straightforward premise. So let's get into the series as a whole. First, I want to talk about Logan Tom versus Angel Perez, the two knights of the world that we see in here. Angel is so fucked over in this series because Logan and, you know, John Ross from the previous book both were recruited as Knights of the World because the lady appeared to them and said, like, Logan, I need you to be my knight, and all that woo-woo shit. And then both men embraced her, and then a few weeks later, Two Bears shows up and gives them the black staff. Angel, on the other hand, Two Bears just showed up and gave her the black staff. Logan, throughout the series, is getting his assignments and orders because the lady appears to him and tells him to do stuff. Angel, first a tatterdemalion, shows up, and that's pretty much it. The tatterdemalion tells her that one time. But the lady never, ever, in Angel's entire life, as far as we are aware, ever appears to Angel. Only to Logan and, you know, John Ross. As far as we were aware in the previous books, the lady always recruits her own knights. But this says that's not true. Are you seeing where I'm going with how this looks misogynistic? Also, Logan, to add on to that misogyny thing that doesn't make any sense at all, Logan is always considered the better, the stronger, the more experienced knight of the word than Angel is. Logan has been a knight of the word 2 years longer than Angel. That's it, just 2 years. That's not a whole lot of experience. If he was like 10, 15, 20 years older than her, yes, that's a lot of experience. 2 years, not a whole lot of experience. If you look at all the battles in all of these books, you know who fucks up a lot? Logan. You know who doesn't fuck up a lot? Angel. Angel's the one who's fighting the main demons. She's the one who almost dies multiple times to protect the people she has been charged with protecting. Logan, on the other hand, is the one who fucks up because he's too late and lets the people in the compound push Hawk and Tessa off the roof of the compound, I guess. The top? I don't know what the word for that is. He's the one that lets the demons kidnap Kristen, who's the elf that he went to replace protection from Angel for, right? That didn't make any sense. Those were not words. When Logan had to go replace Angel because Angel was on her deathbed because she was fighting a demon trying to protect Tristan. And Logan had to go replace her. Logan let Kristen get kidnapped by demons. Like, Logan's standing right there and he just doesn't pay attention. And then he has to go back and unkidnap him. But Logan, then when the Kree, like, Logan's supposed to be hunting the Kree, because the Kree is trying to kill Hawk. And you know who kills the Kree? Angel. So just the fact that it's like Angel's less than, like, we're told over and over that Angel is less than. She's not as good as Logan. She's not deserving of direct contact with the lady. But in action, Angel is way, like, any day of my life, I would want Angel to have my back and not Logan, because she never fucks up anything and he constantly fucks up things. And the only consistent trend here is the fact that she is a woman. And that is disappointing. The other weird thing in here is the insta-love relationships. Or I guess not insta-love, but just like the really badly written relationships. You've heard me complain about Hawk and Tessa this whole time. I will continue to say that Tessa has no personality at all. The only time she ever even talks, she's talking about Hawk. And it's like, I believe in you to him, or telling other people, you need to believe in Hawk and not burden him with your emotions. It's like she's so fucking hollow. It's annoying. I think that's why I didn't like remember her going into this, because she has absolutely no purpose other to be an emotional shell. She's not even like, I guess she's like a reason for Hawk to do the things that he does, but I think there could have been a better reason other than just this relationship that has no substance to it. We get another relationship in this book where Logan and Sim, who is the elf ranger, Kristen's older sister, they see each other and literally instantly fall in love. Like, he sees her and he's like, she is the one for me. And then she apparently, like, we don't have anything from her perspective, but she apparently feels the same. Instant love. I do appreciate that Logan does trust her to take care of herself. He's not trying to be like overbearing and protective. That would annoy me. He was like, you know what you're doing. Lets her go off on her own, even though he thinks she's going to die, because that is her decision and not his to make. That I do appreciate. But the instant love was so stupid. Like, why? Like, give us a reason for them. Like, let them get to know each other. Like, I get that once they get to know each other, there's grounds for, like, a real relationship, but literally seeing her for the first time and instantly falling in love, boring. There is a third relationship that I thought was done really, really well, which is between Panther and Cat. Cat is a girl, I don't remember if I talked about her in the last book, but she showed up in the last book. She's kind of a side character, and she is a girl who is turning into a lizard. And in the last book, she had like stopped her transformation somewhere in between, so she's not really accepted by the lizards, but she's also not accepted by humans. And she was kept as like a slave of like a lizard king. We're gonna go with king. There's a guy who ruled a city who was a lizard. King sounds like a great word for that. And Logan rescued her, or basically just helped her rescue herself, honestly. And she was kind of like in love with Logan. And then once Logan, and then realizes that Logan is never going to return her feelings. It doesn't even have to do anything with Logan's and Sim's relationship. She just realizes that because she's part lizard, that no man will love her. And then she starts turning into a lizard again. Like, she starts getting new patches of scales. And so she decides that she's leaving everybody. And Panther wouldn't let her. Panther at the very beginning just started calling her, like, instantly when he met her, is like, oh my god, you're a freak. You nasty lizard. And then over time, Panther came to realize that I'm an asshole and she doesn't deserve any of these things. She's actually pretty cool. And then they built a friendship, and then by the time that she's decided to leave, he's just like, I'm coming with you. There's nothing you could do about it. And she's like, you can't come with me. And he's like, fine, I'm walking in the same direction as you, but I'm not with you. Just ignore me. And that relationship where you see it build from like prejudice to friendship to maybe into something more towards the end, that's a good relationship. So I know Terry Brooks could write good relationships. He just chose not to with Tessa and Hawk and Logan and Sim. Another just random interesting tidbit that has nothing to do with really anything. The place that Hawk is taking everybody is called the Safehold, right? And the lady at some point talking to Logan, I think, calls it the Safehold, or maybe the King of the Silver River calls it the Safehold. I don't remember who calls it the Safehold, but that's what it's called. It's like one word, Safehold. We'll see this in the future where the Safehold is something important in the book, The Elfstones of Shannara. And the book, The Elfstones of Shannara, was made into a television show. And the Safehold was a important part of that television show because it was an important part of the book. But interestingly enough, in that television show, Safehold's in San Francisco. But in here, it's in the Pacific Northwest. Like, they cross the Columbia River at Vantage, Washington. So you can look at a map and see where Vantage, Washington is, and then know that that's where they cross the Columbia River. Then later, they go through Spokane, Washington. They follow, like, there's talk about them following a highway, and then they end up in Spokane, and that's where they get like a resupply. And then from that has taken them about 2 weeks walking from their initial walk. So you can kind of measure the distance that it's going to take 2 weeks. Then they walk another 2 weeks before they get to their destination. And you know that they're not really getting as far because they say that we walked another 2 weeks, but we didn't travel quite the distance because of the terrain, because they're getting into a mountainous region there. All in all, you can kind of get an idea about where Safehold might be, even though they don't necessarily have the language to say that we're in Glacier National Park, but they're probably in Glacier National Park or somewhere in that general area, like the Flathead National Forest. Glacier National Park, somewhere in that little stretch of mountains right there. But I would like to think that Glacier National Park is where you go to survive the apocalypse. But that is basically the story. I left out a bunch of the details so you guys could read it if you want to. I would just cover like the main plot points. There's a really cool, I do have to say, like the first chapter of this book versus the last chapter of this book has like an outside perspective that has so much foreshadowing, and it's kind of fun. It was way more fun the first time I read it when I didn't know what was going to happen. But even on a reread, I was like, oh, I remember that. That was fun. So there you go. Again, every book in the series got 3 stars, and I'm kind of concerned that Shannara is not as good as I remember it to be. But 3 stars is not bad. It's not great, but it's not bad. But we'll see more next month. I honestly don't remember what the duology that I'm reading next month is called, but you will see that in my TBR.